My name is Jack Mandeville, and this is Jacked History. Today's episode is the tale of two red-blooded American men from humble beginnings who never planned on being in the positions they were in, and how one chance encounter between the two ended in tragedy for one of them. The first man was born Leslie Lynch King Jr. in 1913, but the name didn't last long. His father, for lack of a better term, was an abusive piece of garbage, and his parents were divorced shortly after his birth. After a few years living with his grandparents, at the age of 4, his mother remarried, and young Leslie eventually took on the name of his new stepfather, Gerald Rudolph Ford Jr. I think some of you can figure out who we're talking about. Peter, who are we talking about?
Gerald Ford.
Gerald Ford. President Gerald Ford. And since Jerry was now in a stable home, the young boy became a golden child and standout athlete growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So much so, he was offered an athletic scholarship to the University of Michigan, where he played on 2 undefeated national championship teams and won All-American honors as a center. Then the NFL came calling. But since this was the 1930s and the NFL wasn't close to being the big brand name it is today, he rejected offers from NFL teams and opted to attend Yale Law School instead. And while at Yale, in order to earn some extra money, he signed on to be a professional male model, where he was photographed for numerous magazines of the time. Upon graduation in 1941, he was admitted to the Michigan bar, where he started his own law practice until Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and he commissioned in the Navy, where he spent the next few years seeing action all over the Pacific theater of war until his discharge in 1946. With the resume he had, he was soon after elected to Congress in Michigan's 5th District, where he would serve for 25 years. Okay, I'm gonna hurry this up, but please just let me go on a rant real quick. I am sick of hearing how JFK and Ronald Reagan and all these others were the hottest presidents the US ever had. Even when you remove Ford's jock resume and literal job as a male model, just by looks alone, the man is clearly the best looking president we've ever had. He was an Adonis, the kind of friend you'd want to bring to the bar with you because all of the women are gonna flock to your table and you'll get some leftovers out of it. Anywho, let's talk about another son of Michigan. Oliver Billy Sipple was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1941, one of 8 children of George and Ethel Sipple. Oliver's dad and a couple of his brothers did what Detroiters did in those days. They worked at the General Motors plant. And like Ford, he was a good-looking guy and well-liked. But unlike Ford, Sipple left Michigan pretty much right after high school. He wasn't like the rest of them in a lot of ways, and he wanted to find a community outside of Detroit. He went to California, where he worked as a tradesman, and was in Dallas, Texas, where he worked as a bartender. Right when the Vietnam War was starting to heat up, at the age of 25, Sipple walked into a recruiting office and signed up for the Marine Corps as an infantryman. He did 2 tours in the peak of combat in Vietnam with 4th Marine Regiment, where he was badly wounded by shrapnel on his second tour and ended up spending over a year in a hospital in Philadelphia as a result. After spending some time in New York City after his discharge from the Marines in 1970, he made his way to San Francisco, which was a popping place for many Vietnam veterans and other Americans who were jumping into America's counterculture. Sipple worked odd jobs, was well liked by his friends, but was also known for having a bit of a drinking problem. Nothing crazy, but the kind of guy you had to dump off at home after getting kicked out of the bar for being overserved. All right, let's fast forward a few years to 1973. The Nixon administration was in chaos. America was in chaos. Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned because of being indicted for tax evasion. The White House evoked the 25th Amendment, getting to choose who they want as the VP without election. Well, why not Gerald Ford? Everybody loves Congressman Ford. The Republicans like him. The Democrats like him. Our mothers love him. My dog loves him. He's just a lovable guy. He's safe, vanilla, free of controversy. Ford never had any aspirations for that office. His only goal was to become the Speaker of the House. But since the Democrats were in the middle of a 40-year streak of controlling the House, Jerry settled for being vice president. And pretty much right after that, the Watergate scandal was in full effect, and Richard Nixon was resigning from the office of the presidency on August 9, 1974, making Gerald Ford the new President of the United States of America. But while most political circles in D.C. liked Ford, the country was an utter shit show in the wake of the Nixon administration, and Ford was doing everything he could to manage all of it. On September 5, 1975, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, a deranged follower of Charles Manson, unsuccessfully attempted to assassinate President Ford in Sacramento. Her motive had less to do with Ford and more to do with her anger over environmental issues. Ford was just a target that would showcase her anger towards the government. Luckily, Ford survived because Fromm didn't have a round cycled in the chamber. Dumbass. 17 days later, on September 22, 1975, Oliver Sipple woke up that morning and decided to take a walk around his San Francisco neighborhood. He had a hard time holding jobs and was living in a 4-story walk-up apartment that was paid for by his 100% disability checks from the VA. In the days leading up to September 22nd, Sipple had been admitted to a VA hospital for what was most likely psychological issues related to PTSD. You know, from the war. As he made his way back to his apartment, he saw a large crowd gathered around the St. Francis Hotel. After inquiring about the crowd, he was told that President Ford was going to be making his way out of the hotel in plain sight of everyone. Oh, snap! The president! How often do you get to see the president with your own eyes? So, Sipple joined the crowd out of curiosity. It wasn't like it is today where anybody in eyeshot of the POTUS has to be heavily vetted. You could get within yelling distance back then, and shooting distance. As the president was about to exit the front door of the hotel, the crowd surged and Sipple was pushed into the back of a middle-aged mother named Sarah Jane Moore, who was also waiting for the POTUS. Moore had been on the Secret Service's radar before, and in her purse, she was carrying a .38 revolver that she had bought that morning. As the president exited the hotel, Moore reached into her purse, pulled out the revolver, and bang! One shot towards the president that narrowly missed. As she raised her arms for a second shot, the quick thinking of Marine combat veteran Oliver Billy Sipple lunged at Moore, grabbed her arms, and diverted it right as she got off a second round that wounded a taxicab driver. As you would imagine, chaos ensued. The Secret Service got the president tossed into a car and drove off. Moore and Sipple were both cuffed and detained, but it didn't take long for the Secret Service to figure out it was Sipple who saved the president's life. Sipple, while being questioned, was visibly shaken by the whole ordeal, but he was released and retreated back to his apartment. Moore would end up serving a life sentence, having been released on parole shortly after Ford's death of old age in 2006. And like Fromm and so many other would-be assassins, the bitch was clearly off her rocker. Anywho, Oliver Sipple had become an unintended hero. Every reporter in America was trying to get to him, but he was dodging them like he had dodged the Viet Cong years prior. Oliver Sipple was a private guy and didn't like any of the attention that was being thrust upon him. But the gloves were off. America wanted to know anything they could about this ex-Marine hero who saved the president, whether Oliver liked it or not. Enter Harvey Milk. Milk is best known as being one of America's most notable gay activists during that time, and a prominent fixture in San Francisco politics. And he and Oliver Sipple knew each other going all the way back to their days in New York City. Not only that, they were friends in San Francisco. Sipple had helped Milk out with some of his political campaigns. While Oliver Sipple was doing everything he could to stay out of the limelight, Harvey Milk was seizing a golden opportunity. Here, You had this all-American, square-jawed former Marine in Oliver Sipple. He would be the perfect poster boy for Milk's activist ambitions. So, without Sipple's consent, Milk left a message on the phone of a prominent San Francisco columnist that would be waiting for him the next morning when he came into the office. And what did Harvey Milk have to tell him? Oliver Sipple, the man who saved the president's life, was a gay man.
Whoa! Gay! 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 Gay!
Dick move, Harvey Milk. Dick move. Let me explain why. First off, if anybody should have known better than to do that, it should have been Harvey Milk. But he put his own ambitions and activism over Oliver Sipple's right to privacy. Second off, let me give some context to social issues in the mid-70s. To be openly gay back then was a lot different than being openly gay nowadays. Nowadays, someone can make an Instagram post about being out of the closet and everybody is gonna leave comments about how brave and awesome they are. Or, most of the time at this point, nobody even gives a shit. It's become close to a non-issue. A gay actor can play one of the most straight characters in television history and everybody buys into it. You can be openly gay and own a successful sports franchise. And not to say prejudices still don't exist, but it's a hell of a lot safer to be openly gay in every walk of life than it was in the 70s. In 1975, being openly gay meant that you lived in a big city like New York or San Francisco and you were only open about it with other gay people. The internet didn't exist back then. So you had the safety of being yourself around other people like you, but you had the ability to keep your personal life at a distance from your family and friends back home. There was so much more pressure to hide that from family, especially Sipple, who grew up in a conservative Baptist home. You know, for example, if you were gay back then, you could just call your mother up from whatever big city you're in and be like, "Oh, hey mom. Yep, things are still good here in San Francisco. Oh yeah, I'm still trying to find a good girl to marry out here. But I guess you could say I'm a bit picky. No, mom, I don't think it's weird that I'm in my 30s and have never had a girlfriend before. You know what? I just want to find someone perfect like you. All right, mama, I'll talk to you later. Dave, let me suck your dick."
It's dark, you're scared, you're hiding from a bear. The doors are shut, you can't see a thing, but you smell something in the air. Jump out of the closet and eat, grill your ass off. No longer in the closet with grill your ass off. Your tongue will taste the flavor, your nose will learn to savor. Your ass will take a blast with grill your ass off. And a bear.
It didn't matter. The San Francisco Chronicle ran with it, and soon after, the headline of "Ex-Marine Saves the President's Life" turned into "Gay Ex-Marine Saves the President's Life." By this time, a few members of the press were granted interviews by Sipple, where he specifically told them he didn't want his sexuality to be brought up, which they did anyway, as he continued to downplay his heroism and ask for privacy. The only good thing Sipple had going in any of this was that Sipple had received a personalized letter from a fellow Michigandanian. Peter, what is it? You're Michigander. Fuck, I don't know. President Ford sent a personalized letter to Oliver Sipple thanking him for saving his life, something that Sipple would cherish for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, you had Harvey Milk over here screaming, "What? Just a letter? Why didn't Ford invite him to the White House? Is it because he's gay?" Milk was making the whole thing about himself because since Sipple was basically in hiding, Milk became the de facto spokesman that wasn't asked for. Fun fact, Gerald Ford and Harvey Milk both have US Navy ships named after them. Not Oliver Sipple, you're about to find out why. Here's where it gets really sad. There's a reason why Oliver Sipple, like so many gays of his time, wanted to stay low-key about it. His parents' house in Detroit was now flooded with reporters asking about their gay son they didn't know about. Before America found out that Sipple was gay and just knew him as the brave Marine who saved the president's life, His father and brothers were having beers bought for them after long shifts at the plant. Now there were snickers and insults being lodged their way during a more close-minded time in American history. When Sipple tried to call his mother, he was hung up on, but not before being told to never call them again. And when his mother died years later, Oliver Sipple was banned from going to her funeral by his father. That's why Oliver Sipple wanted to be left the fuck alone. He knew his entire world would be thrown out of whack. He didn't want to be known as a hero. He didn't want to be known as a gay man. And he didn't want all of that shit that came with that in the 1970s America. All that being said, it should be noted that he continued to stay friends with Harvey Milk until Milk's murder in 1978. Sipple understandably tried to sue the Chronicle and some other prominent newspapers, including his hometown Detroit paper, for $15 million, alleging invasion of privacy. He lost the suit in 1984. The argument was that even though he was a private citizen, his actions to save the president's life caused him to become a newsworthy figure, and his sexuality along with it. It just got sadder for the guy after that. He was never really able to hold on to a job and lived off his disability in a lonely apartment. The little drinking problem he had turned into a big drinking problem. His weight ballooned. He had terrible heart problems. In February of 1989, at the age of 47, Oliver Sipple was found dead in his apartment. The TV was on, a half-drunk bottle of Jack Daniels sat next to him, and the personalized letter from President Gerald Ford was still hung on his wall. Sipple wasn't just a reluctant hero whose act of heroism brought more attention than he wanted. He was a victim of his time. Had this happened 30 or even 20 years after, it might have been a non-issue to the public and to his family. So what's the moral of the story? I don't know. Don't trust the fucking press. Those bastards will always prioritize the scoop over someone's best interests. Every time. Please like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification button.
Or I'm going to tell the press that my camera guy is gay and it's going to ruin his life.